Okay. Um, hey, so I'm here with my neighbor and your fellow community member, Lev Natan. We're talking to each other pretty much across the street via Zoom. And I ran into Lev recently, who just moved into the area or this particular area, and he was telling me about some things that he's up to. So I'm really, really happy to be talking to you today, Lev.
Thank you. Thank you, Susie.
Yeah,
Grateful to be here and nice to meet as neighbors and then realize that we can, do some work together in the community. It's wonderful.
it is wonderful. And I really, I want to express that I was looking up your projects and your work, and it's really very, very exciting to me, what you are doing, which is clearly, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this, but clearly about healing and creating stronger bonds with each other and with ourselves. And I love that you run a men's group. I think that's really, really powerful. There are so many women's groups out there, and so many ways for women to connect with each other and also our spirits. And I was very inspired by the fact that you run a men's group in town. Um, Also, you are organizing Indigenous Peoples Day um, in Great Barrington in October of 2021 this year. So I wanted to talk about what that's about and some of the challenges that have come along with organizing this, and maybe anything that you want to include about your personal work.
Absolutely. Thank you, Susie. Well, yeah, Indigenous Peoples Day is not something that I invented at all. I first heard about it because uh, I participate in Native American ceremonies, sweat lodge and Sundance in particular, and other kinds of um, you know native traditional ways of prayer and worship. Um, I grew up Jewish, and still have a strong connection to my parents who raised me in that way, and have great respect for my own ancestors. And that's a story for another time. But in some ways, my spiritual path, um, which was at one point deepening into my roots, my Jewish roots, then guided me to Native ceremony, and as a way of really connecting more deeply to, a practical engagement with, some of the teachings that were most meaningful to me from my ancestors. So, and that's one of the things that I always have a great deal of gratitude and respect for from Native people is whenever I've gone to ceremony or learned from Native teachers or elders, they always say, you gotta remember where you come from and honor your ancestors. And that's really, you have to have roots. We're like trees. Human beings are sometimes called two-legged praying people, and the trees are one-legged praying people. So the difference between trees and humans, one difference is that we move, across the earth, and the trees stay solid, and rooted and grounded. But we need to have spiritual roots and ancestral roots, like trees. So all that being said, I have a great deal of, it feels like a debt to pay to Native people. And I think, to be honest, uh, as I think more deeply about it, what Indigenous Peoples Day is about me saying, I've received so much, really, at a challenging point in my own personal life, in my growth, Native ceremony was there for me to get me through some challenging moments, to the point where I feel like I might not even be here if it
Wow.
wasn't for Native ceremony. And
Wow. So
I-
offering you valuable and nourishing insights through a particular perspective. Yeah.
yeah. And so out of, over 10 years of being in relationship with teachers and community members, and then voraciously reading about Native wisdom and the history, the traumatic, unthinkable history of this country and really all around the world, what the onslaught of Western imperialism and culture on Native people all around the world. When I connected and heard that there was something called Indigenous Peoples Day from friends about 4 or 5 years ago is when I first heard about it. Someone sent me an invitation like, hey, we're having this event on Indigenous Peoples Day. I was down in New York City at that time. And then it was like, hey, wow, that's really cool. Not just cool, that's something that's waking me up just knowing about it. And then the fact that it's placed on what is still what's still officially a federal holiday called Columbus Day. So right there, it's a paradigm shift from maybe you could say his story to her story, or from the dominant paradigm of how stories are told, the old way that Columbus discovered America and there was nothing here, to the Indigenous Peoples Day version of the story, which is there was a great sophisticated um, culture, many cultures that were interwoven, interconnected, lots of diversity, the different kinds of tribes and nations and peoples that lived here on what's also known as Turtle Island, but here in the United States, in North America, Central America, South America. There were civilizations, very sophisticated civilizations that lived here that I'm not an expert historian, but there's tons and tons of books to educate yourself about these things. And Indigenous Peoples Day is really the way that I want to observe it, and I want to invite others to observe it with me, is to start to heal in the 21st century. Are we in the 20 or the 22nd century now?
Yeah.
I always get confused how you say that, but it's the 22nd century already. And there's a sense, I have a very strong commitment to the awareness and action that's necessary to heal our biosphere, in the face of climate change, for my son and all of his the children that are here living today, and for their children 7 generations down the line, all the way into the future. I think about them all the time, and I'm connected to what we need to do as adults in order for them to be okay. What's life going to be like in 30 years for them, in 2050? That's a very significant number for those, or date 2050, in regards to climate change and drawing down carbon out of the atmosphere.
I've
So
also heard to 2030 as a date kind of being bandied about as to when we're going to begin to see how much trouble we'll be in if we continue on this path.
absolutely. I
But
mean,
so
it's the sooner the better. And so there's, what I'm trying to say here is that there's an intrinsic connection between the healing in our hearts and culturally and socially in regards to um, coming to terms with our fraught history with genocide in this, in America, in the United States,
Mhm.
and as well as the treatment of Black people and people of color. It's all connected. And so that these movements for social justice and for human rights and reparations are intrinsically connected to the healing that needs to happen with our climate. So I'll just say that, and then we can keep talking.
Yeah, well, I think that's brilliant. And as you're talking, I'm really seeing how it all comes together. And I'm reminded of when I was very young and kind of processing the American history as it was taught in classrooms. And I saw through that right away, I remember, because the information was fairly easy to find that in fact Columbus didn't actually discover America, and that there were really, there was already a very well established and progressing civilization here. So I saw through that as a young person, and it was always it's always been this very deep conflict for me. And so I, for one, um, am very excited when you're talking about bringing more of this awareness to more people. And, especially around here, this land in particular was inhabited by the Mohicans. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, the Stockbridge band of the Muncie Mohicans. Yep.
Okay, okay. I think about them every day just driving through this landscape and imagining um, what that was like back in the day, and really having this deep feeling of sorrow, and what a wonderful vision that you're carrying to really start to spread this awareness and start to act from this place that we want to get better, and we want to be more respectful, and we want to um, really acknowledge where we all come from.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and of course I'm just one of a growing movement, and my my mentor here locally is a man named Michael Johnson, has been very involved, and he was involved in organizing a number of powwows that happen with a group of coordinators, right? It's always a group of people. It's never one person that does anything,
right,
right?
right.
But he's been involved in getting us to this point, and has a relationship with Shawn Stevens, who's a Mohican uh, ceremonialist, who's come to this area and visited many times. He taught at Kripalu, some workshops, and has been here for many years in the past, visiting from Wisconsin. The Mohicans, as far as I'm learning,
Mhm,
always just learning. I think we all are.
mhm.
Um, they were moved to Wisconsin, and they have a reservation there. Well, actually, they were given part of the reservation from the I believe it was the Menominee tribe. I'm not sure. I might be mistaken. Gave them part of their reservation out in Wisconsin.
When you say they, are you talking about the federal government? Are you talking about the, did you say Manam?
Well, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe what Michael told me is that the Menominee tribe has a sizable reservation in Wisconsin,
Mhm.
um, and the Mohicans got moved from the Berkshires, literally. It
Yeah.
wasn't even that many, maybe a couple hundred years ago.
No, no, that's the thing, is it's not that long ago. You
Yeah,
know,
like like our great grandparents. Some of the people that
it's not that
live
far.
here in the Berkshires, they have farms that were passed down. You can go back, and they probably, maybe have an oral tradition. Some of the people that still live here. So anyway, Shawn Stevens is going to be coming this year. And starting at the fall equinox, September 22nd, we'll have a community a celebration of the equinox, and then a number of workshops and different ceremonies that he's going to do, as well as other community organizations having a climate resilience workshop series. Different organizations who have something to contribute, and in this overall connection between honoring Indigenous people, honoring our history, acknowledging it. How do we heal it? Asking these
Yeah,
questions, and
very
that
good,
connection
very
between,
good question.
yeah, between that issue and our climate resilience. You know, so and then on Indigenous Peoples Day is October 11th, which is a Monday, and we're going to do a walk all together in Great Barrington. Still need to go through the permitting process for that, but we have a little bit of time now. It's just not even May yet, so.
I know, but time is really whipping these days.
Yeah,
So
we'll get it all squared away
yeah,
next
in
couple of
my
months.
mind, it's like right around the corner. My you said something a minute ago that I wanted to ask about. Okay, climate resilience. Can you talk to me about what you mean when you say that? And how is that connected to this walk into Indigenous Peoples Day, into your work? I also wanted to mention one of your podcasts. Maybe you're willing to talk a little bit about your about Jake Singer,
Hmm.
some of the work that you were doing with him. Okay. So yeah, I was wondering about climate resilience, what you mean by that and what you hope to achieve or what questions are out there.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate that question, because I've been bringing those two words together now for a little while, and no one's asked me that directly. I'm like, well, what do I mean? Let me think
Well,
about
I
it.
think
No,
that would
I have some thoughts for sure, but it's,
communicate that clearly because yeah, so that
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well, so resilience. What does resilience mean? Resilience means when, you know, for a human being, it means when you get knocked down, you can get back up,
right.
right? And there's a lot that's knocking me down lately, and
Look at
I'm
you.
finding, I'm finding a way to get back up. That's
Yeah,
resilience. And
yeah,
for years now, that's what makes, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger.
right.
So that's on the human level, and then on the ecosystem level, and on the social level or the economic level, it's the same thing, right? If an ecosystem gets attacked by a hurricane, and all the trees get knocked down, is it going to be able to regenerate? So regeneration and resilience are I think interconnected. Um, so climate resilience is, the way I am you think using that phrase is saying, okay, here we are, you know, we're in a situation where, like you said, in 10 years, we're going to be almost over the edge if we don't really step it up in regards to, right, all the major catastrophes. I mean, I would say the COVID pandemic is a result of the climate emergency, right? The public health and the biodiversity loss. It creates and generates, these kinds of mega um, pandemics. It's not coming out of the box. Like, how did this happen? There's been years and years of um, viruses that have, wreaked havoc on populations, and that has to do with a lack of resilience.
Trees, yeah,
Yeah, so that's demonstrating a lack of resilience. If we look at the human family, as one body, it would say that we our collective immune system is very weak right now, and it needs to be. How do you build an immune system? We have that whole direction we could talk. So climate resilience is actually all of those things. It's an interconnected whole systems approach to the future. How can we orient ourselves to do everything in our power to make life better for our children and our grandchildren and the future generations? That's a big, tall order, but it's what time it is on planet Earth. And the old education is all about compartmentalizing and specializing. And there's something valuable about that because you can see things very clearly in one way through a microscope, right? But it's been at the expense of seeing the whole picture and how things are interconnected. And so then there's this whole movement over a number of years, 10, 20, 30 years of systems thinking and how do whole systems work, how do ecosystems work, how do economic and social systems and environmental systems all work together or break down
Right.
because one aspect is out of balance, and then it creates imbalances throughout the whole system. So that's the big picture of climate resilience. And then how does that work in our region? Well, it starts with the mission of our organization, or really not the mission, but our fundamental theory of change, our belief.
What is the name of your organization, Lev?
Alliance for a Viable Future.
And if folks were interested in finding out more information about this work, where would they go?
They would go to allianceforoviablefuture.org, O-R-G. Yeah,
Okay,
all one word.
and I did want to add that that you can find, or I found some preliminary information about this Indigenous Peoples Walk and all of the events that you're organizing around it in October 2021. I found information on that under the projects tab.
Exactly. Yeah,
And
the first project on there is Indigenous Peoples Day. Yeah.
Yep. Yep, and yeah, there was a lot of information on there, and I presume you'll be updating that as things happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's just a preliminary. We just had our first volunteer organizing meeting a couple of weeks ago. So we're still, if you go to that page, you'll be able to reach out to me and get a Google invite to our next. We're going to have monthly volunteer coordinator meetings. So if you want to actually help to plan the event, it's mostly going to be volunteer organized and produced.
Of course, yeah, as it should be. What was the turnout like? How did the organizational meeting go? Are you looking at any challenges that you weren't expecting?
Um, we had a good, solid group. I think there were six of us on the meeting
Nice.
for our
That's
first
good.
meeting.
That's
Yeah,
good for a first organizational meeting. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's people that I've been in touch with, and two or three people, and then they knew one or two people, and it's really, organizers need to have their own sense of real commitment to not just participate but to contribute, in that, not just have a desire to commit, but have some bandwidth in their busy lives or not so busy lives to be involved, and also ha- have something in regards to community engagement or networks that they can be supportive.
Mhm.
So it's great. We're getting
Nice.
started with that. And so what I was saying is, our theory of change is that change flows through relationships at the speed of trust. Change flows through relationships at the speed of trust. And so that's really what Indigenous Peoples Day, the way that we want to observe it, is about, is climate resilience starts with relationships that are really built from a place of genuine trust with one another, that we have a shared value set, a shared sense of commitment to the future, so on and so forth. And so that's why it's not just go out and have a walk and that's great, we feel better about ourselves. That's a start. But we want to have these workshops where people get to engage with each other around global issues that have a local expression. What is it in the Berkshires to be resilient, with our food systems, water, energy, so on and so forth. There's a lot of awareness that's here already. And how is that related to these cultural issues of, Indigenous reparations for Black and Brown people? And, there's a lot of, social, there's a lot of, there's a lot of wealth here in this Berkshire County, and then there's also a lot of,
Notice that, yeah.
yeah, there's also poverty too, right? Well, there's on both ends of the spectrum, but there certainly is a tremendous amount of wealth and resource here. The people that choose to live here, and with that kind of wealth, we have an opportunity to contribute, and to make things right, in our own lives and in our communities.
Right. Well, and not only that, if we are successful in doing those things here, that could be an example, an inspiration for other communities everywhere.
Absolutely.
It's not just about you or me or the Berkshires. It's really, this is huge.
Exactly.
And that's really what I think that's what struck me, Lev, about your project and your work when I was researching, is that you said something before. It's not just about coming together and doing a walk and feeling better about ourselves and going home, that you're organizing, all of these opportunities around this event to really break it down and experience this, and to talk to each other and figure things out. It's very exciting. Again, I don't mean to use that word so much, but it's true. It's
a good word. Yeah.
It really is the whole, it feels to me like the whole package.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, and then the other part of it,
people could really learn something here.
Yeah. Yeah. And learning is doing, right?
Yes.
The learning is getting
me.
involved. Like, I don't know very much, I remember one of my teachers, who's a friend and colleague. I remember he started Chronogram magazine. I used to live over in the Hudson Valley, and it's a wonderful magazine. And he said in one of his books that he wrote or something, he said, someone asked him, how did you learn how to start a magazine? And he said, I started a magazine.
Right.
He didn't know how to do it. I don't know how to do this. Okay. I'm outing myself. I don't know how to observe Indigenous Peoples Day. I did it once last year, and I invited other people to do it with me. And I think we're going to learn together by doing it. And I don't know how to, make the world right for our children, but I don't have a choice, but to learn, and I better learn fast, right? And I think all of us do. So, and the other thing I want to say about this work is I have a commitment to doing it every year, for the rest of my life. And that when I die, it's gonna live on after me. So we're here in the Northeast. We're gonna observe Indigenous Peoples Day for the unforeseeable future. For the foreseeable future, however you say that. We're gonna observe Indigenous Peoples Day, and here in the Berkshires, we're going to. And the vision is really to seed local organizers all around the Northeast, in Burlington, Vermont, and Boston, in New York City. And
also in Albany, there are a number of small social justice organizations.
Absolutely. So that it's happening simultaneously.
It is. Yeah.
On that day, but then also the same kind of, similar kinds of organizing work is happening in every community. And then there also, what happens from there, from that kind of coming together of ceremony, right? That ceremonial reverence and that sacredness of doing something, that's a whole trajectory of thinking, why do we do ceremony? But we know we have something in our DNA, in our intrinsic, in our hearts, that this is important to do. We feel differently when we do ceremony, and
That's
bringing that
correct.
together with activism and relationship building, community organizing.
And also, regardless of how you view the ceremonies, just participating with other members of your community in a type of ceremony, you get to know people in a different way, and you get to start to develop intimacies with people and real connections. And that's how these things take hold.
Exactly. And when I say ceremony with Indigenous Peoples Day, it's
Yeah,
just a walk. It's a
yeah,
walk.
right.
Going out and walking for that purpose, to acknowledge and to observe what has happened on this land.
Mhm.
There's a vigil aspect to it, right? To mourn and to grieve and to say, I'm taking a stand. I'm walking into the future, and the future is going to be different than the ignoring of the atrocities.
I don't think that they can be ignored much longer. That is for sure. What was I going to say? So as far as the walk is concerned, what is the path, if you know it, and is there a particular relevance to that?
Well, that should be a part 2 of our interview, because yeah, it's still coming into formation. Last year we had the walk, because it well, it was the first year, and I used to live in Sheffield, and I had a very strong connection with the Bartholomew's Cobble. I used to go there for a walk, and I took my son there, and my wife and we would all go together. And so I knew that land very well. So I said, I want to do it over there. So about 25 of us met at Bartholomew's Cobble and did a ceremonial walk. It was also significant and meaningful because Ma Bet's house, I think Elizabeth Freeman, is at the Cobble. So we were also able to acknowledge, the Black Lives Matter movement, in addition, and I mentioned that here. So it was because of the outpouring last year, where people, I didn't publicize it too much, last year, but boom, 25 people showed up. And yeah, Jake Singer, who is an adopted grandfather for me and my Sundance sponsor in chief, and a ceremonial leader, a Navajo medicine man. He's lives here on the East Coast because he does work for Native American veterans' rights, and so he used to live in the Washington D.C. area, and has been working for 20 years to get not only Indigenous Peoples Day as a federal holiday, but a Native American Veterans Day, which would be November 7th, which we're also going to observe as part of the series of events, November 7th, in Native American Veterans Day. Just like we have a Veterans Day,
Yes,
Native Americans serve at a higher per capita than any other ethnic group,
that's
which
interesting.
is just, yeah, that's a whole interview question, conversation
Right.
in itself. But anyway, he came last year, and there's some pictures that you can see on our website of us all walking together.
I did. I saw those. They're very nice photographs.
Yeah, and he's very familiar with walks for a cause. He actually walked across the country for Native American veterans in, I think, the 1990s. If you listen to the podcast, you can hear about that. He put his warrior staff from the Navajo people. He's the keeper of the warrior staff. he put it in the Pacific Ocean, and then
Mhm.
he walked straight across the country and put it in the Atlantic Ocean on
Wow.
his way to Washington, D.C. So he's
Wow.
he's done that kind of work, and so he'll, I'm going to ask him to be involved as well this year.
Yeah, he's my impression of him through my very short bit of research was quite positive. I'd love to know more about him at some point. This is this is this is great work, Lev.
Thank you, Susie.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Um, and I invite our listeners to keep an ear out for announcements about events leading up to the Indigenous Peoples Day walk or ceremony, as well as events afterwards and surrounding it.
Thank
And
you. Yeah, and a good way to get in, just to have those announcements to make sure that you're abreast is just going to our website, as I said before, Alliance for a Viable Future.org. And
yes,
at the top, it says click here to receive our weekly newsletter. And
and
sometimes that's right now, it's actually twice a month,
oh,
on the full moon and the new moon.
yeah, life is different.
Yeah.
And
So, but
it is the full moon tonight, I believe.
yeah, actually, we're
How
gonna
you
send
doing
you.
on the newsletter?
Well, I'm gonna. It was supposed to go out today, and it will,
Nice.
or tomorrow morning, I think.
Nice. I'll have to sign up before tomorrow morning then.
That sounds good. Yeah, I'll queue it up
Yeah,
for tomorrow morning.
good deal. Let me just see if there's anything else that I wanted to talk about. Okay, so as far as volunteer organizers, do you welcome anybody who is interested in lending a hand, or do you have a specific criteria, or is there someone with a particular skill set that you're looking for, or how does
Hmm.
that work if just a community member was interested and wanted to be part of this?
Yeah. Well, in general, if you hear the call within you, and this is really exciting, then go to the website and email me at lev at allianceforaviablefuture.org and
Mhm.
say, hey, I heard the you know Berkshire Community Radio conversation with Susie,
Mhm.
and I want to get involved. uh Basically, we're looking for people with or community organizational skills, outreach, press, writing a press release,
And
and
also people
people
with
who have connections with good organizations that would be good places to have events,
Mhm.
um, you know for to have workshops, people who have connections in the community, uh, and with nonprofits as well as for profits. We want to really build this. We want to have organizations speak up that they are in support of this work. We actually have we've received grants from the local cultural councils, through the Mass Cultural Council. Um,
awesome,
and so
awesome. Yeah, I was going to mention that. Yep.
yeah, so it feels great that we have that affirmation, and we want organizations and businesses to say, I support this work. And I don't just support it, but I stand with it. I stand behind it. I walk with it. We're going to walk together. So yeah, and anyone who feels the call that this is, work that's not just important. There's a lot of important work in the world, right?
Yeah,
We
there
can't
really is.
we can't just do everything. There's so much to do. So there's some things that you feel called, you feel pulled to say, hey, this is something I want to contribute my time, talent, and treasure. I heard Lynn Twist talk about that: time, talent, and treasure.
I love it.
So,
I love it.
so be in
It's a
touch.
very nice way to say that for sure. Um, and what I'm seeing is, if you aren't able to or don't have the bandwidth, I think it was important that you brought that up earlier as far as being part of a volunteer organization. You have to have the bandwidth to really, make a difference. But at the same time, if you don't have the bandwidth for that, or if you're not called for that, it looks like there are many deep, interesting opportunities to learn about how to do this, and together, coming up in October and maybe leading up to it. So there are really, from my perspective, it seems like there are many, many ways to connect with this cause, and to this conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you don't want to be part of the organizer group, then just come,
Yeah.
come to choose once the calendar's up, pick something and come to it.
Nice. Well, we at WBCR, we would love to keep in touch about the progress of your project, and also we would love to continually let people know when things are happening. So any listeners, if you want to keep in touch with this project over the air, we will continue to air information, or you can certainly visit the website where there is a lot of other info. Do you have, Lev, a presence on Facebook or other social media that people can connect and engage with?
We do have a Alliance for a Viable Future Facebook page. And last year we had a group for Indigenous Peoples Day. All the people from not just the Berkshires participated, but we had people from other towns, even just families. There was a few bigger events that happened, in the Northeast. So we have a Facebook page where people were sharing stories. And yeah, I think, and we do have an Instagram page.
Okay.
Alliance for a Viable Future.
Nice. I think sometimes it's a really easy way for folks to get information.
Absolutely. Yeah, all the newsletters.
You update all of that regularly.
Yeah, the newsletters go out, get posted on our Facebook page.
Oh, okay, good. Great. I see it right here, Alliance for a Viable Future.
Awesome.
And like you said, you were talking about trees before. There's an absolutely gorgeous photo of a tree that just looks like it's emanating light from its branches. Great. Thank you. Thank you. I think yeah, I think that's good.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah, you too. I don't think I have any other questions. Lev, is there anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap this up? Anything at all, or do you?
Well, I'll just let me take a moment to think here.
Yeah. And you do sound baths?
Not right now, because we have maybe sometime very soon. I was doing them at Racebrook Lodge with my wife once a month. She does acupuncture, so we do the sound acupuncture and sound, and maybe we'll be starting, based on COVID. But yes, I do that. It's wonderful. I miss it. I miss doing that.
I'll bet you do. As a radio person, who has a very sort of a lifetime love affair with music and sound, I just find this very fascinating. In fact, I'll tell you, my daughter, she was born without any drugs, anything like that. What I did was I used just intuitively used toning to kind of match the harmonic of the pain. And it was actually painless and joyful. And it was all about sound.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
the humming and toning, that kind of thing, just matching
Yep,
the frequency of the pain. It was perfect.
absolutely. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, the
I think,
trust hormone, oxytocin. Wow.
yeah, I think, yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. That's
Right?
wonderful, and it's related. Everything's that I do, I feel, is related. It's one thing. That's one of my teachers told me, everything you are is in everything you do. So I always think about that. And on that note, just maybe to close, and I when I do interviews, I always ask the person I'm interviewing, what's a final thought that you want to share with our listeners. So I'm thinking about the radio listeners here that are listening. So first of all, thank you for your kind attention and um, your openness to this conversation. If you've gotten this far, I appreciate your that this is a topic that resonates with you. You didn't turn it off. Say, oh, that sounds great, but not for me.
Right.
And so just a thought that really struck me, something real in my life. I'm learning more and more. I need to say things that are real and even more real, like what's real in my life. Because the way the world is right now, people want real. They don't. We have a stronger and stronger BS detector because there's so much of it out there.
Isn't it
And
wild? It's wild.
yeah, so I was watching a movie a couple of weeks ago. It happened to be on the night before our first organizing meeting for Indigenous Peoples Day, just a few weeks ago, a couple weeks ago, and my wife and I were watching White Fang, which is
Oh,
a really
Jack
wonderful.
London, right?
I mean, it's challenging movie, but it's a anime or you know digital movie, really beautiful. But it's about, I think it's based on Jack London's book, The
White
Call of
Fang.
the Wild. I'm not sure. What is it called? White Fang
No,
also.
it's called, I'm pretty sure it's called White Fang. He wrote that and Call of the Wild.
Got it. So yeah, it's based on his movie. And so if you haven't seen it, it's based in the gold rush era. And so there's a storyline. One of the storylines is an interaction between a native person, the native community out there, and the gold rush crazy people, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you could just say gold rush crazed, people.
Right.
And so there's some scenes of just the persecution of native people, and it's painful for me. It was painful for me. It's always painful when I learn about it. I recently heard a native elder just this weekend speaking about his experience in the boarding schools. We don't hear about those things. It's horrible. And he said, my life was hard. That's what he said. It's hard. They were beaten, and he's in his 60s right now. He's 60s, 70s. Like my mom, she's 70. My dad's 74. He's their age. And he was, a lot of people deal with child, unfortunately, but this was a systemic child abuse, in boarding schools for Native people, in our lifetime. I heard that in my own ears from Native people. So
So we're
anyway,
not, we're not talking like we're talking about a native person just going to a regular boarding school. It's not a boarding school
no,
for
these were cultural genocide schools. That kids were taken away from their families and put in Catholic schools, and beaten by the nuns, beaten so that their native heritage and spirit would be beat out of them. And thank God they didn't succeed. Um,
talk about resilience.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Exactly. That's why I listen to those people, because they have a lot to share about how do you stay happy, and how do you stay sane,
Right.
and how do you stay how do you honor yourself and have integrity in the face of such heinous disrespect. So the point is, is I was watching White Fang, and I saw this, and it was like I was wincing, like, ooh. And I said to my wife and to myself, I said, well, at least tomorrow I have a meeting for Indigenous Peoples Day. And I wanted to tell you, everyone, that because there's so much that's wrong in the world, and we can get, if the antidote is taking action, plain and simple, in at least one way that you believe is significant, that it's you are taking a stand for what you believe is right for the children and for the future generations. That when you're a grandparent and you pass on, that the children tell a story about you. They said, thank God for that person, that's why I can live in this world the way it is. They made a way for me, they made a path for me. So um, when I say I'm involved in Indigenous Peoples Day and observing it, and making that available for the community, and leading by example, Susie, as you demonstrated. You said it's not just about the Berkshires, it's going to ripple out to other communities.
Yeah.
Then that um, is an antidote for ourselves, just for cynicism. Because cynicism is a privilege. A lot of people can't even entertain cynicism because they're just focusing on surviving, most people.
Right.
And so when you pick something that's real, and you say, I'm gonna put my stake in the ground for this, then you're actually creating a pathway into the future that others can walk on. And so that's why we need to keep at it. And so that's why I want to encourage you, whoever's listening, whether it's this issue or whatever issue that is real for you, keep it going. I'm telling myself, I'm reminding myself also, it's hard sometimes, just the all the things that are on my plate. And it's all, I know it's like that for you too, Susie,
Yeah.
and everyone that's listening. We all
Sure.
have busy lives,
Sure.
but we got to keep our spirits strong.
This is
Thank you.
yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you so much. This is a remarkable opportunity, not only in this community, but in this time, to really look at these things. And I love, and it's been kind of repeating in my mind as we're talking, I love how you said earlier how, you're like, well, I don't know how to organize an Indigenous Peoples Day, and that's how you learn how to do it. You do it. And it's like my first thought when I was reading about you and reading about what you're doing in this remarkable event and everything, I was thinking, well, I don't know enough about this, but I feel this incredible opportunity to learn about it, and to learn with my neighbors and my friends and my community members. So it feels like a really open invitation to participate.
Amen.
So, thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're
Yep.
welcome. So great to talk with you, and
You
look
too.
forward to more.
Good. I hope so. I hope we can do this. So
All right. Well, that's
we
that's
can
good
cut
to
it.
know.
So